Hi everyone, welcome back to another edition of my videos, and today I wanted to show you a really nice endgame study that I found. This particular one was in fact a study from 1840 by a player known as Szen. Now this particular puzzle was known as the Szen pawn problem, or the king and three pawns on each side problem. It was actually a front piece to an 1840s book known as Walker's New Treatise on Chess, and this was the front piece to this particular book, showing this particularly difficult study, or what it described as the difficult study. Now, what's fascinating about this position, and when I first looked at it, I thought, okay, this is probably a draw. I put it through as an engine, and you can see here, okay, I've got it on 20 depth. If you put it at much deeper depth, it will solve this problem. So I was kind of going to myself, this looks like a draw, right? And it's fascinating because back in the 18th century, so probably 100 years before the solution of this was found, Greco, who was one of the first writers on chess, one of the first people who actually had games of chess, thought that this position was in fact a dead draw. And it was only after a number of analysis, and particularly from this player known as Szen, who actually, with the help of another player known as Captain Evans, who we know very famously from helping create the Evans Gambit, they were able to find a solution to this. And he argued that whoever is going to be, I say argued, he found in the solution that whoever is going first in this position will win the game. Very, very interesting, considering that, as I say, it looks like a totally symmetrical position, but just shows how important moving first is, particularly in endgame problems like this. So, see if you can solve it. I'll let you, I think the best way to do this, personally, is you pause my video, right? You set up on the board, you spend maybe 10, 15 minutes, maybe write down some notes on what you think about this position, what are the things that you found interesting about this position, and then see if you're able to solve it. Now, it looks very difficult, admittedly. When I first looked at it, I was like, oh my god, this is really hard. But in actual fact, you'll find the solution to be much simpler than you would imagine. Now, for those who have never done studies before on chess, essentially, or might be quite new to the channel, I don't really know why I do these studies. Well, basically, a study is it's not like a problem. It's not like a puzzle where you've got a finite amount of moves to find checkmates or try and win like a whole rook or whatever. The whole purpose of these studies is there are a number of different moves, and you have to try and find the right plan or the right position that you want to achieve in order to win the game. Now, for most endgame studies, this will be where you're either promoting a pawn to a queen, and then you obviously, a king and queen is an easy win for that player, or you're just kind of clearly winning basically in the end game. So see if you can solve it, and we'll go into the solution very, very shortly. Okay, so the solution to this is really fascinating, and I'm going to quote from Walker's Treatise of Chess the two solutions. So from the actual book, he says the first method of winning is effected by white's so pushing on his pawns as to compel black to enter the cage they present, or what is tantamount thereto, to place his king before them should they present a convex instead of concave form. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself, what the heck is that guy talking about? That sounded like absolute nonsense. Well, basically, this is what he's suggesting. Because you're moving first, we're going to try and push our pawns and distract this king over here in doing so. Eventually, this king is going to be able to stop all of these pawns, and we'll find that out in a little bit. And once we do that, we then get our own king over to then get distracted by his pawns. But because we're moving first, we don't have to make, well, we make the last move, essentially. It sounds weird, but by moving first, we make the last move. Weird. But basically, we're going to put black in a position known as a Zugzwang, where they're forced to then make a move. Now, you may look at this and go, oh my god, how the heck am I meant to calculate this? Well, as I say, all will be revealed very soon. Now, the second way of winning, white first secures opposition against the pawns, seating himself in the centre of the three, also placing himself in their van. Don't know why there's a van, but there we go. The vans exist. Maybe vans, probably something different back then. That neither one of them can move without being captured. In doing this, white has previously ascertained that he thereby forces black to move. As black cannot play either of his pawns, he must retreat his king, so that your pawns advance of themselves to conquest. Now, again, that's probably quite confusing when you read that. And again, this is a 19th century manuscript that we're reading. But essentially, he has just explained what Zugzwang is. So we're going to, instead of pushing our pawns, we do the exact same method, but we do the king move over here first. And then we get the position where we're going to have this king caged by pawns, but then he's going to have to do the same, and eventually he's going to have to be the one who has to make the move first. Okay, so let's see how this plays out. Let's have a look at the first method. So, a4, let's say we push the pawns. Now, this black king, he needs to try and stay close to these pawns. Namely, he needs to try and stay in this sort of area to stop these pawns from promoting. So this is known as the queening squares. If one of these pawns promotes, it's an easy win for white, because again, we get to a queen, we promote to a queen, we checkmate the black king. It's very, very straightforward. So the king will have to maybe come over to d7. He's trundling over to try and stop these pawns. Now, let's say we go a5. Let's push this pawn again. Now this king will have to come to c6. Again, he needs to stay within what is known as the what's called the rule of the square. We have to stay within the promotionness of the pawn. That doesn't make any sense, but basically we have to try and ensure that we are controlling the queening square of this pawn. So now we can move another pawn. Let's move another one, why not? And this is the beauty of connected pass pawns. If, let's say, we move to b5 with the king, and let's just say we give king and the black king another move, he can never take this pawn on b4. If he does, then this pawn pushes down the board, is able to win the game. So that is why he can't do that. So now white can play the move c4 here, and let's say the king moves to a6. Again, he's still controlling all of these pawns, and the simplest solution to this is now playing c5. And this is the cool idea about this. The king will come back into b5, and it looks as though white can't make any more progress here. All his pawns are being defended by this king. A very, very interesting position. So if any of these pawns were to move now, if let's say we play the move a6, this is no good for white, as now the king captures, and in actual fact, white is now losing in this position. He's going to be able to get himself, he's going to do the same thing down here, and he's going to get himself into position where he will be the one doing the zugzwanging. So going back, and obviously the same thing happens on that side, similar position as well. But what's interesting about this is we have now got our opponent's king into what was described here as the cage. So this convex formation of pawns. The king is now trapped in that cage. And this, as I say, the simplest solution now is we do the same. So the white king goes over to e2. And you know, as I said, the biggest difference here is it's white is the one moving first in all these things. He's got the one crucial bit of tempo to win this game. So we'll do a similar idea again. h5, king to f3. if let's say h4 and we move the king here, g5, now defending this pawn. Let's say we go back to h3 and oh, I don't know, let's say f5 is played in this position. The king can sit around for a little bit. If the pawn comes to f4, we can again just sort of sit around for a little bit. King to g2. What's fascinating now about this particular position that I'm just showing you here is it doesn't matter the fact that these pawns are actually going to advance one square closer to promoting than us. So if let's say h3 is played here and king to g3, we've now reached our desired position. This king has entered into the cage of these black pawns, and he is also controlling this convex formation. But as I say, it doesn't matter that these pawns are only 2 squares away from promoting, unlike our pawns where there are 3 squares from promoting. We've reached this important position where now black has unfortunately got to make a very difficult decision. Whatever he does here, he is losing. If he moves his king to a6, we can now push c6. And what's beautiful about this, and this just shows you the power of pawns that have got 1 square difference between each other, that they should easily dominate a king. Because now these 2 pawns, they are controlling these important squares here. So it creates a barrier against the black king. Now, if black were to move back to b5, this would be an obvious mistake. c7, we push forward, a very easy win for white. But going back, if instead he comes to a7, makes sense, where we're still keeping an eye on this square, well, b5 can be played. We would keep it simple, we keep our pawns working together, and then there's just nothing that black can do in this position. You can't come back to this square, this square, this square. If let's say he comes to b8, let's say, well, we can now push a6, and we reach the exact same position, only these pawns have moved 1 square further. So if the king comes back to h7, we've reached the exact same position, but these pawns have actually been able to advance a square further. Now after c7, it's totally lost for the black king. The barrier has been created. He cannot stop this pawn from promoting on the next move. So let's say he goes to b6, we just push here with our queen. It's an easy win. So totally fascinating. As I say, the second solution is exactly the same. So if we go back to the start of this position, we're just doing the exact same thing, except we are moving our king to then create that convex form, get the king into the convex formation there. As I say, we're still then winning because we are going to be the ones moving last in the position. So really fascinating. It was a real joy to see this particular solution. I've never seen a puzzle like this before that looks so sort of simple but actually incredibly interesting. And and I hope you guys were able to solve it as well. But don't worry if you didn't. As I say, it took over 100 years for us to solve this one. So I think it's a tough one. It's a real tough one. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you check out some of my other endgame composition puzzles where I've posted more of these on my channel. If you like what you see, make sure you leave a like. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and click that notification bell so you get more of my videos very soon. Take care, bye bye.